morning, good afternoon, good evening. The debate on whether or not CHAMISA lied rages on. Ordinarily, this issue should have been settled by now. CHAMISA did say he had plugged all the vote-rigging loopholes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections before the 2023 elections. It's all the evidence to show that he said it, and very few people are denying that. And right up to a few days before the elections, he was still insisting that CCC was going to win big because it was God's plan. And he was preparing his cabinet. A day after the election, he was acknowledging that the elections were rigged. And so did all the other reputable election observers, including SADC and the AU. So the issue of the elections were rigged. That too is settled, cannot be denied. But that is exactly what CHAMISA said he was stopping. So ZANU-PF rigged the elections, the very thing that CHAMISA said he had plugged all the vote-rigging loopholes to stop happening. He himself acknowledges that they did rig the elections. So the only conclusion one can say is, well, when you said you had plugged the vote-rigging loopholes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections, you were lying. Because many people emphasize that point. You cannot have free, fair, and credible elections until you implement reforms. This has been said so many times. And yet, this is where it's becoming a sticking point with some people. They cannot accept that CHAMISA is a liar and a conman, purely because they have a personality cult mentality. And leaders like CHAMISA have been elevated to the point of they become demigods. And to call your demigod a liar is just not on. And this has become the sticking point. It is a pity that some people cannot deal with facts and reality. Because that is the basis of a meaningful debate and also sensible decisions. One of the reasons why Zimbabwe is a failed state is that we have tended to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. In this case, the important message here is that CHAMISA lying about plugging the vote-rigging loopholes gave millions of people the confidence to participate in those elections. The consequences of that is you are giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. In this posting from somebody, one of the arguments he was making is, oh, we should not focus on CHAMISA, should focus on ZANU-PF. Again, this is the mentality of a simpleton who doesn't want to accept the facts on the ground. He wants to insist that this is a clear case situation of A or B, good or bad. And ZANU-PF is the bad guys who can do no good, and MDC guys are the good guys who can do nothing wrong. This is a mentality that does not work in practice because it's divorced from reality. MDC leaders were elected by the people of Zimbabwe this last 25 years for the primary purpose they will implement the democratic changes necessary to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. Have they done that? The answer is no, they have not done that. So we cannot keep on pretending that the MDC guys are the good guys who can do no wrong. 25 years, including the 5 years in the GNU, and not even one token reform implemented, speaks for itself. And to keep on pretending that somehow it doesn't matter is absolutely pathetic, because it's only helping ZANU-PF rig the elections and get away with it. As I said, if you participate in flawed elections, you give ZANU-PF legitimacy. Another one was posting there on the social media arguing that participating, forget about CHAMISA lying, the very fact that those elections were held and the results came out, ZANU-PF was humiliated, period. Again, it's ignoring reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is by participating in flawed elections, they gave the process legitimacy. ZANU-PF won and was able to form the government. And by participating, you gave the regime legitimacy. How anyone can now turn that around and say that is ZANU-PF being humiliated beggars belief. ZANU-PF was not humiliated. As much as they would have wanted to win free, fair, and credible elections, the next best thing for them was to rig the elections and get away with it. And in this case here, that is the only thing that they could do. And they're willing to accept that. And if we're going to keep on participating in flawed elections just to humiliate ZANU-PF and perpetuate the dictatorship, that is the most foolish argument anyone can think of. We really have to grow up as a nation. This carry on cannot continue. Another one tried to give a more humane twist to it and say, well, you know, it was a prediction and not a crime. They were only trying to say, oh, that we will win. That was not true. CHAMISA, when he said he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes, he made the people believe that he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes. That's not a prediction. That was a blatant lie. And in this particular case, this is a lie that had far-reaching consequences. The millions of ordinary Zimbabweans believed in the lie, participated in the elections, gave ZANU-PF legitimacy, and thus perpetuating their own suffering. We know that CHAMISA and company knew and have known all along that participating will give ZANU-PF legitimacy. We also know that during the GNU, CHAMISA and company failed to implement even one token reform because Mugabe had bribed them with the trappings of high office. Are we going to excuse that as another prediction? We need to be serious here. One thing I'm glad of is that we are now beginning to see serious debate about CHAMISA and the FDC. Here is a video clip of the so-called Nelson Chamisa debates.
Rupao rwatsangirai rwakaiswa pamusoro paChamisa handitika ndo rwaidiwa nevanhu kwete kuti vanhu vanenge vachitsigira Chamisa handiti vanhu vanoda bato kwete munhu handi mazvona ino kana bato racho pasisina saka vanhu vanenge vachitiri kuenda kopi
kwete vanhu havadi bato vanhu vanoda mutungamiriri anotungamirira zvine udzamu vaChamisa munhu anotya Mwari zviri pachena zvokutoti izvezvi dai vakakwanisa kupinda mumasimba dai ari the most mutungamiriri anodiwa nevanhu but nyaya yakungoitika ndeyekuti vanhu vakaona vaChamisa vatadza kupinda pachigaro vakabva vatanga kuchinja vamwe vacho vakabva vatanga kusapota ZANU-PF saka iwewo kana muvengi wako akauya akarova baba namai vako pamba unobva watomira nemuvengi nekuti baba namai vakundwa ndo zvamuri kutaura vozi vanhu vazhinji vakutoti zviri nditosapota ZANU nekuda kuti ZANU-PF inorova kana kuti iri kurambira pamasimba moti imi maakutoisapota saka kana mukakundwa nemuvengi maakutosapota muvengei munhu auya arepa mai vako pamba ari kukunda pane kuti iwe urambe uchifunga mazano ekuti toita sei baba namai vangu varohwa iniwo semwana ndiri kukura pandichakura vanhu ava ndiri vakuvaitira plan manje wakutobatana nevavengi vaya wakusiya vabereki vachishungurudza zvinobuda
izvozvo izvi zvinonetsa because kana muvengi akauya pamba ivo baba vakabva vaita handover musha kumuvengi zvinonetsa kuti panenge pakugarika sei pamusha pacho
baba havana kuita
hamungazorambe muchizoti panapa ndipa baba anhingi ivo vakaita handover wotaura kuti ina handisina musha.
Well, I'll stop the debate there. The one thing I can say is 2 years ago, I think these two gentlemen would have found themselves being labeled CIOs. The nation has moved on. People can now seriously question the competence of CHAMISA. That is a positive thing. This is what a democratic system should be. Leaders are not demigods. They should be questioned. They should be held to account. The only thing I can say about these two gentlemen is that the penny has not dropped. That what CHAMISA did was not a mistake. This was a calculated thing. MDC-CCC have failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so. Was that a mistake? No, it wasn't. It was a clear sign MDC leaders are corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless. The people of Zimbabwe have to wake up to that reality. If CHAMISA and company fail to implement even one token reform during the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so, it is naive, to say the least, to expect that they will do so now. All CHAMISA and company have done since the GNU debacle was to convince people to keep on participating in flawed elections and lying to them that the opposition would win rigged elections. I think the people of Zimbabwe have got to wake up to the reality that this issue of winning rigged election is the most idiotic idea that the nation has been made to believe. Let's implement the democratic reforms and make sure that we got free, fair, and credible elections so that leaders are always accountable to the people. That's what we need. I've said it on this platform and I'll say it again. There is no chance of any meaningful reforms being implemented by ZANU-PF between now and 2028. So what should people do? Don't participate in a flawed election. It's that simple. SADC and the AU have already put their marker. They condemned 2023 elections as flawed and illegal. They could not go the extra mile and deny ZANU-PF legitimacy because millions of people, of Zimbabweans, were conned by CHAMISA and company to participate in those elections. That is what stopped SADC and the AU denying ZANU-PF. They've done it before. In 2008, ZANU-PF was forced to go into the GNU because SADC and the AU refused to accept the 2008 election because of the blatant cheating in the March vote and the wanton violence during the runoff. This message has been said so many times. CHAMISA is conning people. You would want to make them believe once again that this time I'm going to win. I don't need reforms. And then people will participate in their millions. And the following day, day after the voting is done, you will once again claim that ZANU-PF rigged the elections. Then we are back to square one. After 45 years of rigged elections, the people of Zimbabwe must come to their senses and say enough is enough. Why are we keeping on participating in hoping to win rigged elections? And to what end and purpose? The number one message that must be hammered to the people of Zimbabwe between now and 2028 is that CHAMISA is a liar and a conman. If they get that message, they will not participate in the flawed elections in their millions. And if that happens, Zimbabwe will have a new GNU. And I can rest assure you that GNU will implement the reforms and get the nation out of this mess. So the number one message that must be hammered between now and 2028 is that CHAMISA is a liar and a conman. the two gentlemen in their debate, the penny has not yet dropped. I sincerely hope that it will. Thank you. Have a good night.